So, Patty, I've been talking for a while on the podcast. I've been alluding to the fact that I consult for these ISVs, these software companies that are really going all in on cash discounting, and haven't had them on the podcast. Really, I don't think I've had a single one on. And finally, and the reason is because they're competing with our audience, frankly.
Sure. Right.
Finally, today we have got Celine on from Lavu, who is going after restaurants for cash discounting, but doing it with a processor agnostic approach. Mm-hmm. So he had an incentive to come on. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Yeah, I thought it was really intriguing. I actually learned some interesting insights with Celine, and I think our listeners are going to really appreciate it. And then, James, you did a wonderful little intro on dangers of survival mode. It wasn't exactly a question from the field, but it was certainly an insight for the field.
Yeah, and I think the question that I didn't mention in the segment is, I feel burned out, or I'm not growing, right, or I'm not happy, and I'm making $20,000 a month. How could I possibly not be happy? And that's actually a question I get more often than you would think. And so I discussed that and this danger of slipping into survival mode, and give some insights on how I come out of it when I personally slip into it myself. And then tell us about the Insiders Report.
Well, we have an update on faster payments. I think people are going to be interested. It's sort of, faster payments. We've talked a lot about it. This week, we're going to talk a little bit about the B2B side.
Yeah.
And then, our show today is sponsored by NMI. We want to just give a shout out to them. And what do you say? Should we go into our show?
Let's get going.
Welcome to the Merchant Sales Podcast.
Hey everybody, we are here today with Celine Khatri. He is the CEO at Lavu. How are you doing today, Celine?
I'm doing great. Thanks, James. Thanks, Patty, for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Good to have you.
Absolutely. So I have been wanting to have this conversation for a while. I've been kind of working with Lavu as they've been rolling out cash discounting through their processor agnostic point of sale system for restaurants, which is crazy, Celine, because like literally 2 years ago, if you would have said I'd be working with somebody to create restaurant point of sale cash discounting, I would have said that's never going to happen.
Right.
But cash discounting conquers all. And here we are talking about it today. So before we dive into this super interesting topic, Celine, give us a little backstory about yourself, how you got into the business, and about Lavu, and kind of how Lavu got to the point where it's at today.
Yeah, absolutely. So originally born and raised outside of Detroit, Michigan, spent a great deal of my career growing up on Wall Street, working in finance. Was graduating, was going to go back to Goldman Sachs. While I was in business school, world fell apart. And I said, I don't want to be behind a spreadsheet anymore. I really want to work with my hands and work with salt of the earth people. Started and sold a handful of startups. I had some opportunity and got tapped on the shoulder by the owners of Lavu, Aldrich Capital Partners, who said, hey, we have this company called Lavu. It needs some help. Would you consider helping us in business development and finance? I thought it was a consulting project. One thing led to another. I fell in love with the business and the employees and the customers, and eventually I got promoted to CEO. So all through happenstance. Nothing was a straight line for me.
Yeah.
Never is. Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so let's just dive right into this topic. I can already tell you, our listeners from the very beginning of this conversation, already in their mind were saying, you got to be kidding me. Restaurants are not going for this. They're not doing cash discounting. So I want you, if you could, you've been doing this for actually a little while now. Zoom out for us. Lavu has a huge presence in this space. Tell us how this is being received, this concept of cash discounting by restaurants. What kind of resistance are you getting? Like, give us the big picture of how this is going so far and how you see this trending.
Yeah, from a dollars perspective, it's been going incredibly well. We've added millions of dollars of processing volume literally since August 4th. And I know you and I started working together a little bit before that. Right. So our engineering team has been fantastic. We have an extremely elegant solution, which we'll talk about and get into. The number one issue that restaurants have is, what will my customers think? Right. And it comes back to all the stuff that you've been doing, all of your content, et cetera. Sure. You talk about that and you help us guide through what it is that you have to say. I think restaurants, more than any other vertical that we've engaged with or talked to, are incredibly sensitive.
Yeah.
So back up, Lavu serves the 1 to 5 location restaurant. Okay. So the folks that we work with are owner operators. They're flipping burgers, talking to their staff, making sure so-and-so Johnny and Jane are showing up while managing guests, sometimes even reservations. they are also artisans. They care exactly about the words on their menu, the look and feel of their website, etc. And they are extremely risk averse, particularly because we went through a pandemic, right?
Sure,
the flip side of that is we just went through a pandemic, right? Hopefully we're coming out of it. Inflation is rising. Spare ribs are 85% more than they were yesterday. The cost of containers have gone up 35%. They need to do something because credit card processing is the second or third largest expense item on their P&L. So I get everybody's attention when I talk to them. I personally call them. My sales team works with them. We send them emails. I get everybody's attention. People want to take the call. They understand the numbers. But the way I would classify it in the way I would classify CDP in the restaurant space is it's truly the early adopter curve. We're on the left side of that curve right now. And it's going to be like Bitcoin. It's going to happen gradually, and then it's going to happen suddenly, and it's going to happen all at once. But Lavu is, proud to be at the forefront of that today.
So if you don't mind, before we get into any more specifics, talk to us again, if you don't mind, about size, because you seem to mention that a lot of these are owner operator, the 1 to 5 locations. I'm wondering about larger restaurants. Is it that they're not ready, or is it that you're not ready to take this out to larger restaurants? What's been your experience?
Yeah, so our business is the 1 to 5 restaurant. I would say the average processing volume of a restaurant is probably between $60,000 and $70,000 per month. We do have restaurants that are doing $700,000 a month using our program. And I caught up with somebody who works there the other day, and I said, "Hey, would you serve as a reference or do a testimonial?" She said, "I will do anything for you guys." That was literally her words. "I will do anything for Lavu after what you guys just did for me." It's amazing. She happens to be the controller. I will give you guys, as a buddy of mine says, free consulting for the day. Controllers or accountants at restaurants love this stuff, right? Because they're in the flow. They look at the numbers. It's the operator that is a little bit more reluctant to move forward. And what they really want to see is, hey, who's using this in my zip code? Or I'll do this if you can get my other 2 competitors to do this, right? And so it's really that local network effect, which I think is incredibly powerful. It's like Facebook at the ground level in a way.
Yeah. Sure. So it's such a monumental prize to be won. Basically, it's like if you can. I know in our first conversation we had this. I think I said to you, I was like, whoever figures this out first is going to make an enormous amount of money, because restaurants are eventually going to go this direction. In my opinion, they're already going that way. But like you mentioned, there's going to be that that kind of move. So I want to talk about the other big blocker here. So the first issue is, the restaurant owner operator is concerned about what their customers are going to think. I know I've already put a lot of content. We've had a lot of discussions about how to handle that, and maybe we'll circle back to that a little bit. But once they actually say, okay, this sounds like a reasonable idea, the next issue is tip adjust.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
When they actually go to implement it, they're like, well, wait a minute. I thought you were going to wipe out all my processing fees. So let's talk about that, because that's really the elephant in the room for our industry. People that are selling cash discounting, for them, they already know how to overcome the objection of my customers aren't going to like it. It's like, well, actually, they're not going to care, but they don't understand how to sell against with tip adjust. So talk about how you've handled that and just, how you've dealt with that issue.
Yeah, we make it part of our qualification process. So when we talk to a restaurant, we ask them a couple questions, confirming your size, confirming, this is what you did last month in processing. Tell me about how you accept tips. Well, what do you mean? Well, do you input them at the time of the transaction, or do you batch them at night? Depending on that answer, let's say they batch them at night, we say, okay, well, look, sometimes we're able to save you up to 95% or 99% of your credit card processing fees, but because you batch at a later time, we're only going to be able to save you 80%. But wow, if you're paying $5,000 a month in credit card fees or $20,000 in credit card fees, 80% savings from that number is still monumental,
still a lot
right?
Of money, yeah.
It's a lot. And then they say, well, okay, well, how do I capture the other 20%? I say, no problem. We have sign and tip at the table. You can use an iPod with an iDynamo reader attached. And oh, by the way, we're going to be coming out something that's comparable to a Clover Flex really soon. We'd be happy to give that to you as well. But it's a non-issue, right? Because you're already saving them so much money and you're delivering so much value. I love to tell my customers, I was like, look, I've sold a lot of stuff for my company, but this is truly a 10x product that I'm so excited to be on the phone with you, because I know you're going to call me in a month and be like, this is amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So let's unpack this a little bit. Okay. So
Yeah.
let me start with our listeners who have no idea what we're talking about. So tip adjust. The reason this is such a big problem is that the way cash discounting generally works, I know there's differences of opinion, but the way it generally works is that we're adding a non-cash adjustment or some type of a fee line item. We're adding that onto the receipt, or we're grossing up the amount, whatever. Either way, we're doing something to increase the amount that the person is paying. And that is happening, in real time. And so the problem here is that the customer has to see the amount that they're going to pay.
Correct.
And so if they're doing a tip adjust, meaning they're writing the tip on a paper receipt, signing it, and then some point later in the day, someone is adjusting the authorization amount to include this tip revenue. Well, you can't charge the non-cash adjustment on this tip revenue. So let's deal with that first. And this is one of the insights I love about what you guys are doing. Most people in the industry have kind of been like, well, yeah, but you can't charge it on the tip revenue, so we can't do it. Well, why not? To your point, you're still saving 80%. But how does that actually work from a reporting perspective and things like that? Like, what are you doing to make this so it's not super confusing for the merchant to actually see like how is this working on a pricing perspective so that they can understand what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, we tell them up front, we say, look, you're going to save the credit card processing on the actual non-tip amount, and there's going to be a non-cash adjustment applied to that. And then if you batch later on, you're going to be responsible based on the fee that we're charging you for those tips. Okay, but net, you're still going to be saving money. So we're framing it to them that way. And then, oh, by the way, if you do want to save more money, we're happy to give you this service, whatever, it costs $25. Right. And then Lavu is super robust. We also have reporting. So it actually breaks out your sales, what the NCA was with tip and without tip, so that they can go and track that on a daily, monthly, and yearly basis.
Okay, if you don't mind, because if we can just back up a little bit, because I'm still a little bit confused on this, if you don't mind, Celine.
Mm-hmm.
So if they do the cash discount on the whole ticket, then the tip amount is subject to the non-cash adjustment, or is it not ever?
Yeah. So the way it works is if you were in my restaurant and your meal was $20,
right,
and you wanted to pay with a credit card, it would be $20 plus tax adjusted for the NCA. Okay, let's assume it's 4%.
Right.
If we then presented you with a screen that allowed you to add the tip, our software automatically grosses up that tip to include the NCA.
Gotcha.
So all dollars that are being received by the restaurant are now non-cash adjusted, so they're effectively covering their credit card processing fees.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So the big difference is just it's all about the authorization amount, basically, right?
Correct.
So it's like the idea is, what is the amount that you're authorizing? If the initial authorization is the entire amount, which means you're doing some kind of pay at the table, well, then in that case, you're able to gross it up in real time, collect the extra 4% on everything, use that to offset the fees. But I think what I hear you saying, and just to clarify from a margin perspective, if they say, well, we don't want to do that, we want to keep doing it the old way, and we want to adjust the tip later and adjust the authorization amount, what you're saying is the merchant then is paying that 4% or 3.5% or whatever you're charging.
Correct.
They're paying that on the tip revenue.
That's exactly right. And they're still happy with it, right? Because net they're saving a ton of money.
Right.
Sure.
Okay. So a couple of other questions I want to just kind of follow up with this. So let's talk about pay at the table a little bit more. How prevalent is this? I mean, you have a good pulse in this with all the restaurant clients that you have. I mean, I guess my first question is just how prevalent, how many restaurants are like, yeah, we're already doing pay at the table versus the ones who aren't. And then as a follow-up to that, the ones who are not doing it, are they receptive? Is this something where they're like, oh yeah, we want to do pay at the table, or is it kind of a hard sell? I'm just kind of curious a pulse on that.
I would say that the majority of restaurants are not doing pay at the table. They would like to, right? Because it's super convenient. It allows the restaurants to turn tables much faster.
Sure.
And when we explain to them the breakout between 80% and up to 99%, they're like, well, why wouldn't I do that? Of course, yeah, it's easy. Well, what do I have to do? I said, okay, here's an iPod, here's a reader, which we're already going to give you at no additional charge. And then your waiter or waitress can go up to them and present them with the iPod to sign. And then as an added bonus, I say, look, there's also a little bit of social pressure, right? humans have a tendency, if you give them 3 options, they pick the middle button. So it could be 15, 17, and 20%, right?
Sure.
Right? 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to pick that 17% number, especially if they know the gal or guy is watching over their shoulder, right? And so it bumps up the compensation for their staff. So then they're happy too. So
although
it hasn't been a problem.
I'd be the one that would always do the higher amount because, when I was younger, I waited a lot of tables. So.
Right,
there you go.
Right.
Yeah, that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, but there actually is a study I read recently when we were interviewing Dixon Chu from Copper with their tech. They did there was a study that was done about, and I can't remember the number, but it was significant. I think it was something like 14, 16% tips are higher when you have pay at the table versus not. So that's a big deal. And so for a lot of, that also kind of greases the skids a little bit with training the wait staff and saying, hey, we have this new process and you're gonna have to learn this new thing and it's going to increase tips by 16%. Let's
now I'm
that.
listening. Yeah.
Right.
Listening.
And the other thing too, I think from a consumer perspective, when you give them those choices, 15, 17, 20, right? Yeah. They don't have to do the math in their head. Right. They're just saying, oh yeah, okay, fine. That's about what I'm going to tip.
Yep.
And,
exactly.
And it's automatically done for them. So it actually makes it a little more convenient for them as well, I would imagine.
Yep.
100%. Yeah, that's great. So last question, and I know Patty has another follow-up here, but my last question on this topic of the tip adjust is just, can you give us any percentage on pay at the table? Meaning of the people that you talk to and say, here's the option, 80% versus 100%, what percentage of those merchants are saying, yes, let's do pay at the table versus not? I mean, is it like 80% or is it 60? I'm just kind of curious.
Somebody who is concerned about the 80 to 199% switch, and then therefore we bring up pay at the table. We won't bring it up unless there's a concern, right? Because that's just adding additional friction in the sales process.
Got it.
Nobody's ever said no.
Like, if they have that concern, you have the solution to it.
Yeah, and every single one has said yes, right? So it's a no-brainer.
It sounds like exactly. But okay, so let's switch, if you don't mind, for a minute to the consumer side of this. I know it's always been, whenever we talk about implementing cash discounting in a new type of merchant environment, there's always a question of consumer complaints. Yeah. And I'm wondering, how big of an issue has this been for your merchants?
Yeah. So when we first started doing this, we didn't have a guide. Okay. We explained to them on the phone, hey, Mr. or Miss Merchant, you're going to get some, I don't like to use the word complaints because then it puts a negative
radar, right?
Yeah. What are you talking about? I just signed this thing. I don't want to do it. Right.
Sure.
We approach it as, hey, this is risk-free and hey, try it for 45 days. I don't like to say 30 days because 30 days is not enough. And if you don't like it, then we can switch you to traditional processing. It's still a win for us because we acquired a new customer on processing. But we had some initial issues. We have a customer who has like 5 or 6 locations. She does $250,000 at each location. I was at Disney World on a Sunday with my family and my head of customer success called me. He's like, this lady is super mad. She got some guy and she's located in Texas who sent her a long email saying this is surcharging. Right. And because it's surcharging, you have to do these 10 things, right? We all know surcharging can be a pain, including registering with Visa and MasterCard. So we hopped on the phone with her and we basically just walked her through what exactly to say. So then I told Mike, my head of customer success, I was like, let's put this on paper and every single onboarding rep has to go through this information with our new merchants before they go live. And oh, by the way, let's create one for their staff. And we just armed them with this information before they start doing it. And thanks to James, we say, we expect 1% of your orders in month 1 to have a comment, not a concern, but a comment about this.
I like that.
But after that, you're smooth sailing. And that's the truth, right? After 30 days, they start to see the value. Even if there's somebody who's upset, like I'm going to call my lawyer. It's like one guy, right? So you just got to get through that initial period.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's so important. And again, it's it's like you said, it's saying it up front. It's the surprise factor is the issue. I deal with it all the time. So many of my consulting clients now are either ISVs or ISOs that are doing cash discounting. And, inevitably when I get the call of like, oh, this person's so upset, my first question is, what did you tell them initially?
Right. Exactly.
Well, we told them
set expectations.
Yeah. We told them we were going to wipe out their processing fees and everyone would love it. Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Right.
this is
Yeah.
why we were having a problem.
Right.
is,
Right.
you know, I get it. You got to sell it, but at the same time, yeah, you gotta kind of
You got to
prep
be
them for that.
realistic. You know, you have to
That's
say,
right.
yeah, we're going to save you a lot of money,
Right.
and you might get a little flack for this. And here's what you can do if that happens. That's what you're saying,
Yeah.
right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
I think
that makes it.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say that makes it not too hard to believe either, right?
Sure.
Right.
Right.
You have to introduce that portion into the conversation. Otherwise, they're like, well, why isn't everybody doing
Right.
this? Like,
What's the catch?
this is, what's the catch? You have, being honest and then also telling them the reality.
Yeah, that's what I love about the cash discount pitch is that, it actually works to your benefit, right? So if you present it correctly, as I love how you're wording it with a comment and all that, but like when you present that to them correctly, in the back of everybody's mind, when you hear something that sounds too good to be true, like we're going to eliminate one of your largest expenses.
Yeah.
What do you automatically think? You're like, and then what's the trade-off? What's the catch?
Right.
So when you present it that way, they're like, okay, I get it. They're expecting that. And then it actually works for you because not only does it prepare them for the reality of what's going to happen, especially for a restaurant where everyone is looking at the receipt. Or the screen, like everyone sees it. Unlike a retail store, most people don't even want their receipt today.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone sees it at a restaurant. And that's why it's so much more of an issue there. So
And
good
why
stuff.
there's so much trepidation about doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's do this. Celine, I definitely want to give you a chance to talk about Lavu a little bit more in detail. So, talk to our audience. We have ISOs, we have agents on here. I know you have processor agnostic options and things like that. So just give us a little bit. I know high level, we can't get too specific on pricing and stuff like that, but just tell us what you want to tell us about how this program works and how maybe an ISO or an agent that says, this sounds great. I want to go after restaurants. I already sell cash discounting, but I can't go after restaurants. How would you work with them to accomplish that?
Yeah, no, thanks. Look, Lavu was founded on the fact that we wanted to be the easiest point of sale restaurant software solution for our customers, right? We started off with point of sale completely based on the iPad, right? So it's elegant hardware, which, oh, by the way, you can actually get your hands on. I know with Clover, you can't even get a station right now because they're out, right? And so we have all these ISOs calling us right now, getting on our platform because they can't get their hands on Clover hardware. And Lavu is purpose built for restaurants, right? It's built by restaurant people for restaurant people. That's really, really important. Like the features that we have are very, very specific. But for ISOs and ISVs and other folks like that, it's pretty simple. We take care of the onboarding, right? We take care of the support. We keep the SaaS, and you keep the processing. And right now, because we want to continue to work with ISOs and ISVs on the cash discount program, we don't even charge you for CDP, right? So you can use our elegant software. All you got to do is come to our website, basically just pop in the information for a demo. You hit schedule a demo. One of our sales reps will give you a call, basically walk you through the details, but it's super easy. We do all the heavy lifting for you, right? You introduce us to the client. Obviously, we'd love your participation in getting that person over the finish line, but we don't want you to have to onboard. We just want you to, be happy that your client's taken care of.
Love it. And then, so give us a little more context on where people would go to learn more. I don't know if there's a phone number or a website, whatever, where do you want to direct people that would be interested in getting a demo?
Yeah, so I would go to Lavu, lavu.com, and there's a button that says schedule a demo, and then just put in your first name, your phone number, and your email. Somebody will get back to you right away, walk you through it. A bunch of us were at the Westerns Acquirer Conference last week in Texas, and there's a lot of folks that really want to work with us, particularly because we're a fantastic alternative for restaurants, specifically to Clover, right?
Sure.
Clover is a great product. We have a relationship with its parent. But being actually building vertical software within the restaurant space is incredibly valuable.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Restaurants have very specific needs. I think it's easy. It's usually when I see point of sale systems that do try to cover all the bases, the restaurant always ends up being the base that in my opinion is not really covered very well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They can get
it's very, very specific. Very, very, very specific.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Well, Celine, I really appreciate you taking time to have this conversation. It's a conversation that I think is going to be ongoing in the industry. I'm excited to see the role that Lavu is going to play in this implementation of really getting cash discounting out there in force to the restaurants. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today and share some insights.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
It's been great.
No, thank you. I really appreciate it.
So today's podcast brought to you by NMI. And, Patty, a lot of people think of NMI as just a gateway. And they don't understand that they actually work with terminals.
Yes.
They have the full line of Ingenico terminals and many, many others. And they work with these devices so that, you can provide your merchant. Maybe you have a pizza shop and you want to put a terminal in there, but they also want a gateway for those over the phone orders. Right. Well, with NMI, it truly is omni-channel where they have the device and they have, the gateway for the card not present stuff.
Right.
So I think a lot of people in our industry that are looking for that omni-channel experience where it's omni-channel, but also importantly, it's your technology solution. It's all white labeled for you.
Right.
So you want to provide that as a processor. You want your merchants to perceive you as a technology company, to perceive you as, wow, this company is providing us amazing stuff because look at their logo on all these, on the website, on the terminal. That's what NMI really is providing.
Yeah. And, you can't understate, you can't overstate the importance of omni-channel, having an omni-channel presence and being able to partner with somebody like NMI that allows you to provide that without it looking like a patchwork.
Right.
It's really important.
Exactly. Well, head over to ccsalespro.com/NMI, ccsalespro.com/NMI, set up a free demo, ask them about their terminals. They'd love to show you what they have.
Good. Thanks.
And now, here is questions from the field with James Shepard.
So, Patty, today I am not so much answering a question from the field as I am addressing something that I face a lot in coaching and working with individual agents and even with myself, and that is the danger of survival mode.
Yeah.
And so we all have this like strong gravitational pull towards survival mode. And so let me define it as I'm talking about it and then talk about some of the issues with it. So survival mode is a mindset you can get yourself into
very
where
easily.
You believe that all you can do is survive and continue as things are, but you believe internally that you don't have enough emotional energy, character, discipline, whatever it is, time to improve, to make changes, and to grow.
Right.
All right. And I was thinking about this yesterday because I was talking to Christina last night about how I told her, I said, I don't think I've ever had a time in my life where I had a stronger gravitational pull to survival mode just because we have 2 toddlers right now. We have 2 young kids. In addition, so we have 4 kids, 2 very young. I have the business. Yeah.
Growing business.
Yes. Growing the business, growing 3 businesses right now. And on many, many other things, right? So, ministry things, charitable stuff. So it's like, we have all of these things and it's very easy to say, okay, well, this is all I can do,
right.
And I'm just going to survive at this level. And again, no matter what level you're at, what you have to understand is that you're not going to be happy in survival mode. You're not going to be fulfilled. No. And you might say, well, James, I'm not in survival mode. I make $50,000 a month. Well, if you've been making $50,000 a month for 3 years, you are in survival mode. And so even though you might look at that and you might say, well, no, I'm at this really good level. The truth is we're only happy and fulfilled when we're growing, when we're expanding, when, we're seeing improvements in our life. And so what I see a lot of people doing is slipping into that. And so I just want to talk about the danger of this and talk about some of the ways to jump out of it. Okay. So number one, and again, personal experience today, I'll just be really transparent. So I had this conversation with Christina yesterday. I then went to a park. I took a couple hours and went to a local park and got out. It's still nice enough to walk around a little bit. So I walk around a little bit. I'm a Christian, so I was praying about some things. And then I got out my iPad and I made a list of, right now I'm 38 and a half, just about. And so I have a list of goals I've had for a long time for when I'm 40 years old. And so I wrote those down again. And then I started looking at those and backing them up and saying, okay, so wait, so I have 21 months. All right. So how am I going to get this done in 21 months? I have however many weeks, right? How am I going to get this? And so I started breaking this down and looking at timeline. And so the most important thing is you have to have your why really well established. Why do you want to grow? Many of those in this industry I talk to, frankly, they've gotten to a point where they don't really have a good why. It's like, well, I could make a lot more money because I want to have a bigger house than the mansion I live in now. My Ferrari's not fast enough for me. It's like, sorry, but like, that's just really not that compelling, right? Yeah. Now, there are others who are new to the industry, and for them, their why is, I want to provide this lifestyle for my family, and that's fantastic. But again, I think no matter what level you're at, it needs to be about a little bit more than that for most people. It's not just about the money. It's not just about the things. There's got to be other things. And so think about your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why should you grow? Right? Most people think about why they shouldn't grow. Well, the reason I shouldn't grow is it's uncomfortable, it's annoying, it's expensive, it's painful, it's risky. That's why I shouldn't grow. Yes. But why should you grow? And if you don't have your reason why you should grow has to be more important and compelling to you than the reasons why you shouldn't. Otherwise, you are going to stay in survival mode because that's the logical thing to do. Right. Sure. But once you start to step back, like I did yesterday, and I do this like every day. I read this list of beliefs that I have in the morning, and usually once every month or two, I refocus and look at goals. And you have to do that because otherwise you get to a certain point of success where you're like, okay, it would be easy, for me to sit back and people in my life would look at me and say, well, you're successful, and I could look at that and say, well, that's good. So I can stop here. But the problem is that's not going to make me happy. That's not going to make me fulfilled. And more importantly, there are bigger and better things that I want to accomplish. And so you have to have those goals set out ahead of you, that you have that really strong why, and then you have to back into those things that you're going to do. So that's step number one. Step number two is tell people about it. Tell people about it. Many people are very shy about sharing their goals and ambitions because frankly, they a lot of times sound a little ridiculous, especially if they're long-term. Maybe it's a 10-year goal. Well, your 10-year goals, when I was telling people when I was 30, this would be 8 years ago, when I was telling them what I wanted to accomplish by the time I was 40, I probably sounded like an arrogant idiot, right? Now I'm 38 and a half. It still seems like a stretch, but it's starting to sound pretty realistic,
Right. Some of those goals have been accomplished.
Exactly. And then others, it's like, okay, I think we can do this, So the idea is, you're going to sound a little ridiculous. And that's why you need to have people in your life that love you, that care about you, that believe in you. And you share your goals with these people and tell them. And so this, again, they're talking to Christina and talking about some of the things I was like, I'm going to get this done by the time I'm 40. And, sharing these things, that's important because it gives you that level of accountability where as you're constantly communicating to the people that care about you the most, and you're telling them, hey, this is why I'm still working this hard. This is why I'm still so focused. This is why I'm still willing to take on the stress and the risk of taking the next step because of this. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. Communicating that is super important because it gives you a level of accountability like nothing else.
Yeah, that's true. Sure.
My wife knows exactly where I want to be when I'm 40. And if I'm not there, she will know that I failed to hit my goal. And of course, she'll be right there to comfort me and say, hey, that's all right. Let's set some new goals for 50. But at the same time, I really want to be able to say at 40, hey, look at this, babe. I did
what I did.
And that's powerful. And then I think lastly is holding yourself accountable. And I think this has become so much easier with technology today. Just yesterday, I downloaded a new app on my iPhone where you can track goals and habits. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool because I've been doing it with Google Calendar. But there's all kinds of different apps like this that you can utilize. But the idea is you have to then, whatever these goals and ambitions you have to be reminded of them daily. And you have to hold yourself accountable every single day, starting your day off.
That's really important. I love the idea of I just made a note of that for myself to, get an app like that because it's very easy to lose sight of what your goals are. Yeah.
It is. And to me, I want to make sure it's like every day I want to be thinking about, okay, I know what my long-term goals are, but what can I do today to make progress towards one or more of those goals and ambitions that I have? And being reminded throughout the day. For me, it was, I have Google Calendar and I've always used that. And so what'll happen is I get text messages and emails from myself all day long.
Right.
Multiple times a day, I'm getting emails from myself, text messages from myself of, hey, don't forget to think about this today. Don't forget to, I'll give you one of the examples. So one of my ambitions is that I want to be able to answer the question at the end of the day, what did I teach each of my kids today?
Yes.
And so I want to be able to have an answer to that question, even if it's something small, seemingly insignificant, but I had a moment, a serious moment, not just game or whatever. Of course, that stuff's super important as well for bonding, but it's like, what's the one thing for Alana and Donnie, my older kids that are now 9 and 11, I want to be able at the end of the day to say, what did I teach Donnie today? What did I teach Alana today? How did I help them to grow? And so I have in my Google Calendar, I get an email that says, what did you teach Alana today? What did you teach Donnie today? And of course I don't respond to myself, but I get that. That's a reminder of wait a second, if I haven't done that yet, it's, it's about bedtime. I'm going to go up when I tuck them into bed. Let me take a few extra minutes to talk to them about their day and see if I can identify an area where maybe I could share a little bit of experience or wisdom with them. So it's things like that where you want these daily reminders of what does this translate to? You have your big goal. What does that translate to on a daily basis? And if you'll do all those things, you stay out of survival mode. And I really can't overemphasize for those of you that haven't like maybe thought about it in that context before of the survival mode versus, growth mode. I can't really stress enough how important it is to your fulfillment and your happiness when you're not, when you're in that survival mode. People that say, oh, time just flies by and it's just like gone well, yeah, of course that's true, right? To a large extent, but you can actually really slow that down. I found that when I get into these ruts in my life where I'm doing the same thing every day, no new ambitions, no new goals, I'm just trying to survive. Yeah, all of a sudden I'll look back and go, whoa, what in the world? What happened to the last 3 months of my life? When every day I'm focused and I'm grinding and I'm growing and I'm trying to figure out like, how do I improve? And my life is just changing and growing and expanding. Well, then it's like I get done with a week and I'm like, my goodness, that felt like a month. I got so much done in the last week and I'm different now than I was 3 months ago.
Sure.
That's how you kind of slow that clock a little bit and really enjoy and see that fulfillment in your life. And again, even if you fail, whether you fail or succeed is irrelevant. The happiness comes from I'm trying this, I'm giving it everything I have, and I know that I did everything I could to create this life that I believe I'm supposed to be living. It just really is a fantastic thing. So I fail at it all the time. Believe me, I get into survival mode just as much as anybody of, dealing with, hey, all the kids and the, ministry things that I do in the business and just all of it. But I try to really take a lot of time to recognize that and be aware, am I in survival mode? And if I am, it's worth taking an hour or two to step back and get out of survival mode and get back into growth mode and get your why, get your goals, and then remind yourself every day of how important those are and keep pursuing those. It'll make you happy. It'll make you fulfilled.
Really great advice, James. Thank you.
Patty?
This is the Insider's Report with Patty Murphy.
Okay, everybody, I wanted to give an update on faster payments, which is a subject we've talked about, quite a bit over the last year or two. And, it seems that, and I know that I in the past have sort of, not been that optimistic, shall we say.
Right.
That it's
going to come to pass anytime soon.
Anytime soon. But I really do think we're getting some momentum here. The Federal Reserve and the Business Payments Coalition have just announced pilot programs for the electronic delivery of invoices and remittance information that generally accompany B2B payments.
Okay.
And these are part of the Fed's Faster Payments Initiative. As we've discussed in the past, consumer payments have benefited quite a bit from new and faster payment initiatives, particularly things like instant P2P, the networks like Venmo. But the B2B space has always been slow to adapt. It's always lagged behind consumer adoption on any kind of payments things. And I was just astounded, I guess it was earlier this year or late last year, when I came upon a study that said 40% of U.S. companies still issue checks to pay at least some of their bills. But as a Fed official recently explained, the appetite for faster payments is accelerated thanks in large part to the growing acceptance of digital commerce during the pandemic.
Right.
And businesses are kind of like, hey, the consumers are getting this. We want to get this too.
Right.
And the Fed commissioned a study last year, second half of 2020, in which it found 3 or 4 businesses now consider it important to offer faster payments. And 9 in 10 businesses expect to be able to make and receive faster payments within 3 years, including instant payments, as well as same-day ACH and other faster payment initiatives.
Right.
The Fed survey queried more than 2,000 businesses of all sizes, and also found that a majority of businesses had already sent and received some type of faster payment in the previous 12 months. These included digital wallet payments, same-day ACH, and push-to-card payments, which use the debit card networks. For faster payments to work, and especially real-time payments, however, there needs to be an interbank settlement mechanism that operates 24/7 by 365. We've discussed this too.
Right.
And the clearinghouse, which is owned by a consortium of large banks, has already launched a real-time payment mechanism it calls RTP. It's used by about 130 banks and credit unions, which combined account for about 50% of all U.S. checking accounts, according to the clearinghouse. Of course, that means that the other 50% are held by about 11,000 banks and credit unions. So there's a big chasm there. So that's why the Fed has been developing an alternative that it calls FedNow, which is expected to connect all federally insured banks and credit unions, and is expected to be operational in 2023. Now, here's the thing, and I think a lot of our listeners may understand this, and maybe some of them don't, but, for faster payments to work in the B2B market, there also needs to be an electronic framework for invoicing and remittance information around those payments, and it needs to be at least as fast as the payments are going. And today, most invoices and remittance details are submitted on paper or as a PDF attachment to an email. Mm. So what the pilots the Fed has just announced is to test frameworks needed to support these exchanges. Fed says it has about 73 organizations, banks, credit unions, core processors, and other technology companies that have signed on to pilot the framework for electronic invoicing, and about another 42 will pilot an exchange framework for digital delivery of remittance details across all payment types. With that, and both of those are supposed to last from now through the end of 2022. And if the work continues as fast as it does, I think we might actually be doing some decent volume of B2B instant payments, say in another 3 years or so, which is a lot faster than I ever thought it would be.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong here. I mean, the two big implications I would see here for our audience would be, number one, next day funding, or it could become really instant funding.
Right.
And so there'll be a lot of innovation around that, and it won't be something that's going to be, super expensive. It's just going to be something that, is kind of provided by the Fed.
Right.
There's a new infrastructure. I'm sure the industry will charge for it.
We'll charge for it, but right now they're charging for next day. They're charging a pretty hefty, percentage.
Right.
And once this framework is in place, it's not going to be that costly. There's going to be less costly.
So, Patty, the way I look at this, as far as implications for our audience, it seems like the two big ones would be, number one, next day funding, right?
Correct.
Which right now there's a fee for next day funding. You have companies like Square that are doing like an extra 1% for instant funding to the merchant, whereas this would basically make it not very costly to provide instant funding.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
So we would see that be a lot more prevalent, where merchants might want instant funding in 3 years, and they would be able to get it potentially.
Yeah, and I also think that it, for the payouts to the agents could be conceivably much faster.
True. Yeah. Your upfront bonus money, as soon as it's approved, you're instantly getting your money, things like that.
Getting your money. Yeah.
Like that. And then I guess the other thing would be, when we talk about ACH payments, which has kind of been on the back burner. Right. I guess what we're talking about here and what you're saying is that those may move more to the forefront, especially with B2B transactions, because it'll seem a lot more like a credit card transaction because it's instant.
Correct.
But it doesn't carry any of the risk and any of that, and a lot of the costs are not there. And so that's going to open up a lot more, I would imagine, fintech type companies that are going to come and try to take over the B2B space.
Right. And, I think we've talked about B2B in the past, and I know, with regards to credit card transactions, right? But ACH, although it's always been meant for B2B, it's never really had much of a spillover into our sector.
Yeah.
And I think that this is going to be a major impetus for that.
Yep. I agree. Good stuff, Patty. Well, definitely, I'm sure you'll be keeping us posted on FedNow, but that's going to be an interesting initiative to follow.
Yeah, I really think it's, a lot more than 2 or 3 years ago. It's gotten so much momentum now. I think they might actually meet their deadline.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. Good stuff.
Thank you for listening to the Merchant Sales Podcast. Whether you are an industry veteran, processing executive, or just trying to learn about the payment space, we appreciate your time. The Merchant Sales Podcast is a joint production of Greensheet.com and ccsalespro.com. and we hope you will tune in next week for more information and tips on building your merchant services business.